Good morning, I'm Ben Major from Finextra. I'm here at the SAP Financial Services Forum in London, and I'm chatting to Hugh McCullen of Axxiome. Morning, Hugh.
Morning, Ben. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. And we want to really sort of focus today on sort of banking's core transformations. Can you sort of tell me what makes a successful core banking transformation?
This is the million-dollar question, I think, at the moment. There's no simple answer. What we have found to be successful in the past is where a bank will start with understanding their core problems and then work out, to a degree, why they're in business. Why are they doing what they're doing over and above the traditional profit and loss? So if they are aiming to be innovative or to bring out new lines of business, what do they need to transform in order to make that work? And taking that to the next step, we're seeing a huge wave of financial technology, disruptive technology entering the market through numerous different sources of new competitors and or old competitors doing new things, and just new technologists trying to steal and disintermediate some of their lines of business. So in order to face that challenge, they've pretty much got to step back and say, well, what are we going to transform to? And until they start doing that, they don't get a strategic vision of where they're going to be in the future. So many are doing it. In fact, we've been hearing at this conference some fantastic stories about how people are strategizing and looking to the future and working with some of their competitive elements. At the same time, we've been involved in a number of implementations where people felt the core transformation was driven by IT. You'd bring in a new modern technology system and you take out the old one and it'll all work. Well, it's a whole new world, and that's a little bit like saying we could bring in mobile telephones and we could throw out copper cables altogether. It doesn't happen in quite as rigorous a way. So the core success is where an organization looks beyond the technology, understands what technology can do for it, but really bases itself on what it's in business for. And that can look at any number of lines as well. So if you look at what you're in business for, you're fundamentally looking at your business process model, you're looking at your operations and how to take cost out of the operations. You're looking at things holistically, and the core banking transformation is a component of that holistic strategy. So that to us is what makes success. One of the great examples of the current world is where you make your money out of processes or you lose money out of processes. So if your processes are bad internally, it'll cost you money. If your processes are slick, you save money. And the slickest way to make your processes even more slick is to let the customer themselves do the work. So with mobile telephones, mobile banking, you're actually letting the customer do most of the hard work for you. And you don't have expensive back office people passing paper around anymore. So the vision, the transformation is not just about taking cost out, not just about innovation, but looking at everything holistically.
How can banks adapt more quickly to the channels most FSI customers are favouring at the moment?
Well, again, good question with many answers. We've mentioned already that in some cases the banks themselves are rather conservative. They have legacy issues in technology and in people. So there's people with a way of working that takes a while to change, and people with legacy, or banks rather, with legacy technology that takes a while to change. But I think the simplest solution is to look at it in two ways. One is you need to stabilize the old systems or replace them with contemporary technology in such a way as it allows the core information to be then shared across an organization. But more strategically, as an organization, you're going to be looking at suppliers of new technology and working out through your pipeline which of those suppliers may become the technology of the future, or a collection of technologies of the future which will allow you to innovate. So by actually looking strategically at what's available, working it back to your business model, and then baselining your core systems to release information to those front-end systems, you're in a better position to prepare for the future. And I've got a number of examples of organizations where, for example, they've opened up their what's called an API, or they've opened up their banking APIs to say a 72-hour hackathon. So they get developers in, young developers from a university, and they ask them to build mobile apps over 72 hours. And what that does is it tests that you've built up your baseline so that it can release information to this layer, to the middle layer, or you actually look at what they develop and see, will that work for you as an organization? Will that help you to develop a new level of technology? So it's as you know, it's a combination of things, but I think in terms of the base of the core engine, you've got to be ruthless about saying it's either fit for purpose or it isn't. You need to release through services or through APIs the information that's held within there, and then you prepare your new layers to hold new technology and to go to market with the new technologies that people start to favor. Who knows exactly what's going to happen next, but you could say that if you're working, say, on a mobile phone, on an iPhone and an iWatch, you're probably using the same technology as a consumer, and you're using the same information drawn from the core engine. Some of it will be stripped down for that channel, but ideally you're releasing the information in one way, you're releasing one API.
Now Hugh, I mean, I'm really interested in this one, and that is, do you think the banks are ready for the current paradigm shift where rapid change is very much the new normal?
Yeah. In a word, no. But there are some that are really pushing themselves to get ready. And we've mentioned as well during the course of today that there's a number of ways of preparing yourself for the future. One is to be ruthless about your existing legacy so you're not held back by change. But the key theme of this conference is trying to run simple. So banking fundamentally isn't all that complicated. It just becomes complicated by huge legacies and divisions and ways of doing business that have built up over years. Stripping that back to its core set of business processes is a hard task, but one that's necessary for developing as an organization for the future. Some have been much more advanced than others. I don't know if we can mention some names, but banks like Sabadell in Spain have been really driving their digital agenda very aggressively and looking at how can they take cost out of their existing operations and how can they digitize their existing operations in such a way that they lay a foundation or lay a platform for the future. In this conference we've been hearing about how Royal Bank of Scotland have developed a huge network of technology and venture interactions with California, with Silicon Valley and with Israel for security, and how they're looking at a full pipeline of future technologies that could prepare them for whatever is going to change. I think also the understanding has happened very quickly. If you think back to 7 years ago, everyone, when the iPhone was first released, thought it's a nice toy. Now it's fundamental. This is your personal banking. You have this item in your pocket, which is your bank everywhere you go. So the thinking has changed so rapidly and so quickly that all banks are facing into this new way of thinking, and they are all facing into how do we adapt for change. And of course, there are many paths to get there. In the same way as it's a long road from here to Edinburgh, there's many paths and many different ways you can take to get there, but ultimately many of them will get there. Although, having said that, there are some estimates that maybe 50% of the banks that we understand today will go by the wayside in the next 7 years, whether through mergers or going out of business or consolidation of some kind. So I think the fundamental point is they have to be ready and they have to be on this journey. Some are more prepared than others, some are doing it in different ways to others. Kind of time will tell to see which ones will be the most successful. I mean, again, I know of one example in continental Europe where the bank has outsourced all of their legacy, including their legacy people, to free up their operational managers and their key managers to try and design the digital bank of the future. And you can kind of see the logic there to say, keep today's thing running, but let's all work 100% and focus 100% on tomorrow's thing. And yeah, as I said, there's different ways to get there. I think the next 7 years are going to be really interesting in banking. In fact, you might see quite a few banks no longer around because their competitors will sneak up on them and destroy them. The new banks, people we haven't even seen entering the ecosystem yet, will start to steal their business. Again, as I mentioned, some banks like RBS are starting to develop an ecosystem of these new suppliers and will probably be successful in integrating them into their current thinking, their current operations. Others, unfortunately, will go by the wayside. That's my prediction.